Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. You may think that this is going to be a very dark speech that I'm giving today, but I look back to when Andrea was alive this summer, and she said, "Do not mourn my death, celebrate my life." Being that she was very passionate about education and educating others, I am celebrating her life today by educating you about the disease that took her life, melanoma. Melanoma is a cancer of the skin. And in order to understand a little bit more, you have to understand about the skin. We see it, obviously we're covered with it. You probably are like, yeah, so. There are two main layers to the skin. There's the outer layer, which is called the epidermis, and the under layer, which is called the dermis. I'm going to pass this around so you can get a better idea of what it looks like. Melanoma is a cancer of a particular area in the skin called a melanocyte. That is the pigment of your skin, or the color of your skin, and that's where the cancer actually starts. They don't exactly know why it happens, just like so many cancers. So we'll go forward a little bit and you can get a better understanding of it, but for the most part, they don't understand why. They just know that it does and that there are some things that you can do, which we'll talk about later. One of the biggest things you can do in melanoma is to catch it early. It's not the most common type of skin cancer, but if you catch it early, it's actually one of the most treatable. You need to go back to elementary school and remember your A, B, C, D, and E's when diagnosing or looking for melanoma. The first one is A, or asymmetry. When you're looking at a mole or a growth on your skin, if it's the same on either side, you put it up to a mirror and it looks the same, it's an ordinary mole. If it's irregular and one side is kind of all big and the other side's kind of small, that's considered asymmetry, and that's a sign that it could be melanoma. Could be, doesn't necessarily mean it. The B in this case has to do with borders on the mole that you're looking at, because melanoma will look like a mole or a growth on your skin. So even though on the first picture you saw it looks like it's within the skin, it'll come out on the skin. So the borders on your moles, you want them to be smooth. If they're jagged or irregular looking, that usually is a sign that it could be melanoma. And I say could be, that's also the time where you want to go check with your dermatologist and have them looked over. The next item is color. And these pictures are kind of bad, but if it's an even color, that's usually a good sign. If the mole has multiple colors, and it can be black, brown, and this is the weird one, red, white, or blue, patriotic is not good in this case, that's also a sign that it could be melanoma. I send these pictures around and it's kind of hard to see the scale, but the next is size, or the diameter, D, diameter. You don't want your moles to be any bigger than the end of a pencil, the eraser side, that is. If it's bigger than that, I think we all know what a pencil eraser looks like, that usually should cause some concern. And the next item has to do with E, or evolution. You don't want your moles changing. I'm one of those fortunate, unfortunate people that I have had moles all over my body for my entire life. And they've been the same annoying, my thought, ugly moles. They haven't changed at all. So that's really good. So now you know a little bit about detecting potential melanoma. The people who should be looking are women under 40, men over 40, fair-skinned, fair-haired, blue-eyed people have a more tendency to get it. And also if you have a personal history or a family history of melanoma. Now again, they don't know exactly why melanoma happens, but you can kind of see that it has to do with probably ultraviolet light, because if you're fair-skinned, you have a tendency to burn, which affects your melanoma or your pigment. And also, it does run in families. So again, no exact reason why, but something to look out for. Now, when it comes to prevention, I can extol the virtues of sunblock and say that having sunblock is one of the best ways of avoiding melanoma. There's another thing that can be added because of, in Andrea's case, she had her nails done on a regular basis. Women who have their nails done on a regular basis know that they are cured under UV light. She got her melanoma under her thumbnail. So I'm also adding that for women, you might want to have your nail polish removed periodically or your acrylics removed so you can actually see if there are any growths underneath your fingernails. So now I've given you some things to think about. Remember your A, B, C, D, and E's. And if anything looks amiss, please go check with your dermatologist because I don't want someone else having to celebrate your life by giving a speech about your dog. Thank you.
Please take a minute to evaluate speech of Carrie. While we thank Carrie for very informative speech, I would certainly like to share with you about my family a little bit. My son is a doctor, my daughter is a doctor, and their spouses are doctors. So I have 4 doctors, but I don't get as much information from them because they are so busy in their lives. What she has delivered in 5 to 7 minutes, I never could get that from my kids. Now, next speech is from Bill Brown. Getting through the crowd. The speech is for 5 to 7 minutes from Competent Communication Manual, speech number 4. How to say it? That's the objective. Select the right words and sentence structure to communicate ideas clearly, accurately, vividly. Use rhetorical devices to enhance and emphasize ideas. Eliminate jargon and unnecessary words. Use correct grammar. Please help me welcome Bill Brown and achieve the objectives.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. How many of you enjoy crowds? I see a couple there. Not very many, that's not surprising. Because crowds very often intimidate people. They see a mob of people and they think, how am I going to get to my goal? I can't even see where I'm going. I'm not sure I remember where I'm going. So how can I get from point A to point B? And they start to get tense and nervous and much worse than any of us get when we stand up here and give a speech. But you really don't have to worry that much about crowds. In fact, you can take something that causes you to be tense and turn it into something that can give a little bit of joy. Now, some people may think that I have an easier time with crowds because of the fact that I'm tall. And there are some positives and some negatives to being tall. Positive, of course, is that it's easier to see what's out and about among the chaos of the crowd. One of the negatives could be illustrated by what happened one time when I was a teenager. I was with my family at a sporting event, and we were on our way out and weren't sure how to get to the proper gate for our exit. And I got separated from my family. Looked around, couldn't find them. Thought, well, they must have gone this way. So I started going this way. The problem was that my family was back there. And being tall, I walked faster than any of them. The crowd began to thin, and eventually we managed to connect. From that time on, my family said, okay, if we ever get separated again in a crowd, you can't see us, just stand where you are and we'll find you. A little bit of humor there. You can also keep in mind that overcoming the barriers that there are in getting from point A to point B through a crowd can bring a bit of a rush. And I know a lot of us enjoy an adrenaline rush. It's probably, oh no, I've forgotten her name, but who isn't here, Kim, who is out skiing. I'm sure she enjoys a rush. She may be among a crowd right now, for all we know. And getting started is often tough to get this rush, but because of the fact that the way is just very narrow, but it's not exactly what some would refer to as a straight and narrow, so it's not real clear how to get there. But if you get it done, once you're in the crowd, get to your point, you can really think, wow, that was amazing. I actually made it to where I wanted to be. Now, I have a good friend who really illustrated something quite unique in a way of overcoming the barriers that there are within a crowd, and I would extol his unique way of doing this to each and every one of you. His name is Chris, and Chris was quite a character. He could come up with all kinds of just downright goofy things that would make people crack up. And there was one time when we were going to a movie, parked on the wrong side of the mall, got into the mall, and discovered that there was some kind of home improvement, wasn't a conference, but kind of a show going on. There were all kinds of people, just a huge mob. A lot of the people had little children. None of them were quite as cute as this little fellow. I just love this picture of my son. And we were thinking, how are we going to get through this mob of people, all these strollers and things? We have so many barriers, we're never going to make it. Because, good heavens, we only have about 5 minutes to get across the mall and get to the right place. And someone said, well, you know, I think the only way to get through here would probably be if someone were sick. And before they could say that last word, I was kind of realizing what they were saying, and I wanted to stop them and say, don't say that. Because the moment they said that, Chris, who was a fellow built quite a bit like Lenny, started to kind of lean over and kind of stumble along. He started making noises, and the crowd just moved, and he ran straight for the theater. We got to the cinema, made it to the movie, and we all had a good laugh out of it. So the next time you're in a crowd, I'm not suggesting that you act like you're throwing up, but come up with something unique, and maybe you can have some fun.
Please take a minute to evaluate Bill Brown's speech. Get through the crowd.